Welcome back to the Talk Shop. I'm Eric Henderson in Studio 255 of the Laramie Plains Civic Center. This segment brought to you by Home on the Range Animal Haven with their Good Times raffle and their drawing September 13th. Get involved, LaramieHomeOnTheRange.org. And Yow Hunting Camp for ladies and kids kicks off today, this morning, tomorrow, and Sunday at Snowy Mountain Lodge. That opportunity to learn the skills necessary for safe outdoor recreation awaits you. Get a hold of yowhunting.com. That's YOWHUNTING.com. And you will be a part of the outdoor community, enjoying all Wyoming has to offer. We had in-studio guests earlier this week. Thank each and every one of you for being a part of it. If you or your group would like to be a part of the Talk Shop, this is a public affairs-driven show, and you are welcome. The microphone is open, and Studio 255 finds its home right here, thanks to 93.5 FM, hosting us in their business area of this great building. And this morning, we have more guests, and I'm visiting with Don and Merav. Good morning, both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have each of you here. YCAP well, tell us about YCAP. Don, would you start off telling our audience about YCAP, if you would?
So YCAP is a Wyoming-based animal welfare organization, and its primary mission is to reform the laws in Wyoming as they pertain to livestock, wildlife, and companion animals, so the laws are more humane.
And in addition to helping domestic pets, wildlife, and livestock, some of the topics we've talked about in future segments, or past segments rather, have been really important, kind of shocking. Traps too near trails, traps and trails not mixing as public trails are frequented by families and children and pets just meandering along and enjoying the flowers and the sides of the trails as well as the trails themselves. Traps can be found all too close, and that can bring danger to families and their pets, their animals. And one of the things that was really impressive is your group is making referrals and helping people learn how to disengage those traps timely, because time matters.
And in fact, we're going to have a former trapper, Dave Pauly, will be coming to town in October, and he will give a demonstration. It's open and free to the public about if your animal gets trapped, how to get the animal untrapped, and that involves snares, conibears, and leg hole traps.
One of the other topics that's been most impressive to me is it's hot out. We have animals that are being dangerously left in cars. Let's not do that. Leave your pets at home and make sure that they're safe. You got to look out for these four-pod loves in your family. And a 70-degree temperature in 10 minutes can escalate to more than 90 degrees, folks. And even if your windows are cracked, this can be dangerous. And obviously, with temperatures in August in Laramie alone, we've had temperatures in the high 80s and low 90s. This can escalate to temperatures of 110, 120 degrees in no time. So it's really shocking, but if you are interested, YCAP is a great organization doing fundamental goodness for our community, and there's information in this morning's segment that goes beyond this, but those are topics I wanted to quickly highlight because those are powerfully important and engaging. I think will welcome a lot of other people who might be interested in very, very similar things in their own lives, and maybe they're looking for a way to get involved in the community. And how might somebody contact YCAP as an organization to get involved with your time, talent, or treasure?
So the easiest thing to do is go to our website, and there's a contact email address that people can reach out to. And if you contact us via email, it's a Gmail address, I think, we will get back to you.
Yeah, animal.protection23 and R, 23R at gmail.com. We're going to put that volunteer contact information on the Talk Shop, all our social media channels. You'll have them on each one of them. This information really critical. A much simpler address to remember is simply wyocap.org. And without any more delay, I want to introduce Merav. Merav, good morning. Thank you for joining our show.
Good morning. Thanks for hosting. This is a very important topic we're going to talk about.
You know, and tell us about the topic. Don, would you talk about the two most important pieces that we're bringing to this morning's informational show?
So earlier on this year, there was a change in the law about how northern river otters are going to be treated in the state of Wyoming. And the Game and Fish Commission is meeting in early October in Lander to put those changes into the regulations. The other issue we're going to talk about briefly is what can be done when swift foxes and gray foxes are inadvertently trapped and what happens to their pelts. But the issue I really wanted to focus on is the river otters. And Dr. Merav Ben-David is a specialist with a national and international reputation because of her work with, amongst other things, river otters.
Yeah, so I've been studying river otters in Wyoming and globally, various species of them in Europe and Israel and Argentina and all over the world, basically Sumatra. So I've spent 25 years in Wyoming studying the populations here, and unfortunately, from all our studies, most of the data out there on river otters in Wyoming were generated by my students and myself. And unfortunately, unlike other states, even surrounding states such as Colorado and Nebraska, river otters have not recovered in Wyoming since the near extirpation in the early 1900s. Wyoming is part of the United States because of trapping and the fur trade, because of the Louisiana Purchase. The United States bought the land from the French government. So we are lucky. Thanks to beavers and otters and marten, we became part of the United States back in the 1800s. But we basically nearly completely eradicated all these wonderful fur bearers, including otters. And in Wyoming, we had the insight, our legislatures had the insight of, in 1953, well before I was born, our legislatures decided that we need to protect river otters and put them on the protected species list for the state. So river otters have been protected in Wyoming since 1953, a great move by our legislatures. Despite this protection, well before other states have, Colorado did it only later, for example, otters in Wyoming have not recovered to the levels they have in other surrounding states. We don't really know why. We have some ideas, but not any factual.
Nothing conclusive, huh?
Yeah, nothing conclusive. Some of it can be related to contamination from produced waters from oil and gas, but that's not the only explanation, because we have rivers that are not polluted, that otters have not recolonized. So there's a lot more we need to learn about otters, but the bottom line is they have not recovered. And the Wyoming legislature, this last session in February, have voted, both the House and the Senate, and then signed by Governor Gordon, a bill that basically removes otters from that protected list that was created in 1953, despite the fact that all the data
haven't
we
recovered
have,
yet, but
they
we're
have
removing
not,
them.
So, excuse me. Let me have a sip of coffee.
Yeah.
The only place in Wyoming where we actually see viable populations are the Upper Green River. And that's where the controversy started and why the
Merav, while
Yeah.
you take a refreshment, Don, would you highlight the legislation itself that is at hand?
So the legislation is a done deal, and river otters are now taken off the protected species list. So it now comes down to the question of how are they going to be managed. So happily, they are not going to be trapped or commodified in that way. But what they've decided is go kind of a middle route, and the change in those regulations will be discussed at the Lander meeting. And one reason why we're here is to talk about, okay, if they're no longer completely protected, how should those regulations be written? Because what we're concerned about is it'll open the door for these animals being killed and not monitored correctly. We need to have data and information and public access to information about how many so-called problem river otters are being caught and killed, and how is Game and Fish going about the problem of dealing with quote-unquote river otters, problem river otters.
I find it extremely difficult to understand how a species designated to be protected has not overwhelmingly, impressively recovered, yet they're being removed and unprotected. I find that that's extremely that's confusing to me, and I admit I know nothing more than what you have both really brought this morning, but that sounds counterintuitive to me.
Well, this is Wyoming, and we have a citizen legislature, and Merav testified to the Wildlife Committee very compellingly on the data, but unfortunately, this change in the law was driven by anecdotes, not by facts. But it's a reality, and we have to deal with that reality. So the anecdotes related to several things. One is that the person who proposed the bill, Representative Byron, who is a fly fisherman and a outfitter, he was concerned it would impact fly fishing in his neck of the woods, which is in Teton County and in Lincoln County. Another aspect is there were reports of river otters getting into stocked fish ponds and eating fish. And the last one was that river otters are dangerous. So on rare occasions, if you go into river otter territory, river otters will do what you would do if somebody came onto your property, and that is they will defend their young, and sometimes they'll attack people. So those are the three sets of anecdotes that drove this bill, and they were successful.
I would like to add that river otter attacks are so rare that there are less than 50 worldwide in the last 150 years. If you look at dog bites and attacks and why people end up in the hospital, you have millions just in the US alone a year. So the claim that otters are dangerous is, and also in all
Easily challenged anyway.
yeah, and in all the years I've studied them, which is overall globally nearly 40 years now, we only know of a handful of cases of rabies. So they are not one of the most dangerous animals out there. If you're rafting a river and see an otter, you should just sit back, relax, and enjoy the view. They're very fun to watch. They are not dangerous. The fish pond complaints also were exaggerated I have gotten the same complaints because people know I'm an expert. There are a handful, and mainly I think this was driven by an anecdote. I was very surprised that the Wyoming Game and Fish did not actually collect data on this complaint. You know, it's very easy. We have excellent fish biologists, both at the Game and Fish and University of Wyoming, that could have done a survey and assessed the effect of otters on, the fly fishing community. But that was not done. It was therefore obviously politically driven and not fact-based. And again, as Donald say, it's a done deal. The governor signed it within 24 hours of passing the Senate. We can't change it now. But what we should do is hold the Game and Fish accountable for how they do manage the species going forward. I put a comment to the commission, to the Game and Fish Commission, where I detailed exactly what I think needs to be done to make sure that the data is correctly collected, that the carcasses are, if they're incidental killed or problem animal killed, that the carcasses are deposited in a vertebrate museum of the University of Wyoming, where researchers can actually make use of tissue samples and skulls, and there are a lot of people interested in evolution and morphology, so that they do not become a commodity, but rather, if we have to kill otters under this law, that they are actually used for good purposes.
Merav, what's the estimated population in the area of otters that we're talking about?
So it's in the Green River, where most of the Wyoming otters occur. We probably have moderate densities of, I would say, 1 otters per, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but moderate density is what you would find in inland waterways. Definitely not very high. Otters survived the slaughters of the 1800s in Wyoming, mainly in Yellowstone and in Yellowstone Lake. And from there, our genetic data shows that they have spread into the surrounding watersheds, such as the Snake, the Green, and now a little bit the Shoshone and Upper Wind. The problem with Yellowstone Lake is lakes are not very good otter habitats. They're deep and hard for otters to catch fish in, unlike rivers. So the density in Yellowstone is actually the lowest we've ever recorded in North America. And that was the source population. Again, what we think is one of the reasons it took so long for them to expand. But the Green River densities are moderate. I would say, I shouldn't say because I don't remember the numbers.
One listener just texted in, how many fish will the average otter consume or seek to consume in the day of their life along the river?
Excellent. So otters are a mustelid, which are the weasels and the martens and the otters and the mink. And because they have an elongated body, they lose a lot of heat. So the otters live in cold water in Wyoming, so they have high metabolism. And so from all the studies we've done, they eat about 10% of the body mass. So if an otter weighs about 9 kilograms, they will eat 900 grams of fish a day.
Okay. And are fish the sole food, or are they
the majority? Yeah,
majority?
They are specialized on fish. They do eat ducks sometimes. We had some interesting observations in Yellowstone of them catching ducks, but the majority is fish.
Huh.
The majority is fish.
Don, what do we do now? Where do we go, having had the circumstances come about as they have recently in Wyoming? Where do your guideline? Where are you guiding us to go forward?
Well, several of us plan on attending the commission meeting in inlander in September. And what we would like to do is to encourage Game and Fish to be more specific about what their new management process is going to be. So in giving testimony, the leadership of Wyoming Game and Fish said they will, quote unquote, remove problem otters. Now, I would dispute that they're problem otters. I think we have problem humans who are not fencing in their stocked ponds. But removal in Wyoming Game and Fish argot often means killing. And that's a very simple solution to when Game and Fish gets complaints that stocked ponds are being raided by river otters. But there are some very simple things that people can do about stocked ponds, and that is they can fence out the otters. And so we would like to encourage Game and Fish to provide advice to people who have these stocked ponds about how to do the fencing out business.
Precautionary measures.
Precautionary measures that will prevent and minimize the problem. We would also like to see that numbers of otters that are so-called removed are published and made available to the public so that we can be assured that Game and Fish goes along with the notion that one of its missions is to protect wildlife. One of the problems we have in the state of Wyoming is that Game and Fish, like many wildlife agencies, is focused on commodification of wildlife. And so that usable wildlife or wildlife that can be put on a plate, hung on a wall, or the missus gets to wear it. But some of us just like to see wildlife, and we would like to see any intervention by Game and Fish only in the most extreme cases does not involve killing the river otters.
I'll add to that. It's not just seeing wildlife. River otters are super important in what we call ecosystem processes. I don't know if any of your listeners, viewers have a garden, but one of the most effective fertilizer is fish meal, right? This is what otters do. They eat fish. They catch them in aquatic ecosystems, in rivers and lakes and ponds. But then they scent mark terrestrial locations along the river banks and lake shores, and they transport these fish remains through their guts, and they defecate and urinate in these communication centers, we call them latrine sites, and fertilize the vegetation. And all the studies we've done in Yellowstone and in Alaska show that the vegetation that is fertilized with otter fish meal, otter-derived fish meal, they have higher growth rate. They put on conifers, spruce and pine, produce more cones and more seeds, things that are really, really important. For example, when we have devastating wildfires. If you have devastating wildfires, most of the trees that will survive are those that are close to water. Those are also the trees that will generate the seed bank to reestablish the forest later. And they can do that because they are fertilized for years by river otters that use the latrine sites. So when we think about how do we manage wildlife don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in an ecosystem. They're part of the ecosystem. And in the case of river otters, but we've shown it for many, many other species, they actually facilitate interactions. They fertilize, aerate the soil. If you're talking about other animals like prairie dogs, we know that animals like this are important for the right functioning of our ecosystems. And if we want to survive, we need to make sure our ecosystem are operating properly. And for that, we need wildlife.
What can a listener interested in helping do to further your cause, the two of you, in your organized efforts going forward?
So generally, if you go to a Wyoming Game and Fish Commission meeting, the people who are present are people who have a commodity interest in wildlife. So those are trappers, outfitters, and hunters. And it's always surprised me that the general public, folks who don't do any of those things but like to see wildlife don't attend. So I would encourage folks, even if they can't get physically to the Lander meeting, to sign up to attend the meeting via Zoom. And there's an opportunity to speak up because there's a public session and comments are taken, and those comments matter. So I suggest that people speak up about how these regulations governing dealing with otters, now that they're no longer on the protected species list, will be handled by Game and Fish.
And what's the exact date of this upcoming important meeting?
10 and 11th of September. And I'll be there.
September 10th and September 11th. And I'm going to get, for all the audience, I will get the exact information and detail from Don and Merav, and I will publish that on the Talk Shop for easy reference. If you're not able to make it, perhaps you can make a submission of your comment. A written comment is better than no comment, and people who are in attendance might benefit by having those type of comments shared with them as well, so that they can share those. Don, go ahead.
There is a formal process whereby one can make comments on changes to game and fish regulations. That deadline has now passed, but you can still influence the process by speaking up at the meeting. And Merav misspoke. The date I have for the meeting is September 9th and 10th. If you need to check that, just go on the Game and Fish Commission
We'll
website.
verify that. We're talking the 9th, perhaps at the earliest, and a very important matter of our ecosystem. We're all interconnected, all of us. Go ahead,
Can
Merav.
I say something?
Yeah, please.
I will be very happy to share with you, and you can share it with your listeners, my suggestions to the commission, the letter I put in before July 31st.
Yes, please.
Where I list, it's a very short document, easy to read. I can share it with you, and you can share it with your listeners on what I, as an expert, believe the Game and Fish needs to do to protect otters.
This morning, Merav Ben David, Don O'Toole from wildcap.org, Wyoming Coalition for Animal Protection, in Studio 255, the Talk Shop, and we welcome both of you. Thank you so much for coming into the show. I want to give each of you one last word with respect to our audience, and then for those listening, I'm going to come back in a second segment. We're going to do a real brief one, but both Don and Merav, most pleasurable having you both in. Learn so much every time I get a chance to visit with you throughout the community. This is no different. Don, would you care to make a final comment for the group?
There's another change that is pending in the change in the regulations, and that deals with what happens when swift foxes and gray foxes are accidentally trapped by trappers, and what happens to their pelts. Game and Fish is considering allowing trappers to keep those pelts and to sell them. We think that's a bad idea because it basically opens a loophole. Both species
For commercialization.
Both species are rare in Wyoming.
Wow.
Very rare in Wyoming. My main concern with all these changes to the regulations of fur bearers in Wyoming is that these are trial balloons that the legislature and Game and Fish are trying to see what our response will be if management of federally endangered species will be handed over to the states. So my concern is that they're trying to see if we respond to otters and swift foxes, and if we don't respond and we don't hold them accountable when they get
Other species.
the rights like wolves, they'll do whatever they want without any.
It's already pre-established.
They say, oh, look, we already have these on the books. We can do the same.
Exactly.
And if we don't speak up now, we're opening the door to much bigger problem.
Very good topics. We're going to revisit this last one in our next segment. This segment brought to you in part by the Benton Rusty, 308 South 2nd Street in historic downtown Laramie, and Range Community Insurance, the fine folks bringing us insurance insights on the final Wednesday of each month. Don O'Toole, Merav Ben David, and myself, Eric Henderson, today on The Talk Shop.